Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine for no reason, or caught a flicker of movement out of the corner of your eye, only to find nothing there? We often dismiss these moments as tricks of the light or our minds playing games. But what if they aren't? What if something else is there, moving just beyond our perception? Today, we're diving into a story that starts with just such a moment. A story titled, Her Shadow Moved Without Her. Our story centers on Alara, an antique map restorer living in a quiet, historic town. Her life was one of precision and solitude, spent hunched over ancient parchments, tracing faded coastlines and forgotten cities. Her small cottage, filled with the scent of old paper and binding glue, was her sanctuary. The world outside was loud and chaotic, but within her walls, everything was orderly, predictable. Everything, that is. Until the shadow. It began subtly. A slight lag. A momentary hesitation. One sunny afternoon, as Ilara reached for a pot of ink, she noticed her shadow on the wall didn't quite keep up. It seemed to pause for a fraction of a second before catching up to her movement. She blinked, shaking her head. It must have been the way the afternoon light filtered through the old, wavy glass of her window. An optical illusion, nothing more. But the seed of unease was planted. The next few days, the incidents became more frequent, more undeniable. While tending to her small garden, her shadow would stretch and contort in ways that didn't match the sun's position. It would ripple as if underwater, or twitch at the edges when she stood perfectly still. Alara tried to rationalize it. Stress, fatigue. Maybe she needed new glasses. But deep down, a primal fear began to coil in her stomach. It felt like she was being watched, not by a person, but by her own silhouette. One evening, she decided to test it. She stood in the center of her living room, a single lamp casting a sharp, clear shadow on the wall behind her. She held her breath and slowly raised her arm. Her shadow mimicked the movement perfectly. She lowered it. Again, a perfect match. A sigh of relief escaped her lips. It was all in her head, but just as she turned to leave, she caught it. A flicker. The shadow's head tilted slightly to the side, a gesture she hadn't made. Her blood ran cold. She stared, frozen, at the dark shape on the wall. It remained still, a perfect, motionless copy of her once more. But she had seen it. It wasn't her imagination. The real terror began when the shadow started to act on its own. It wasn't just twitching anymore. One night, while Alara was reading in bed, her shadow on the wall behind her slowly lifted its hand, its long, dark fingers reaching towards the shadow of the bookshelf. Ilara watched, paralyzed with fear, as this shadow hand traced the spines of non-existent books. It was a slow, deliberate, almost curious gesture. It was as if her shadow had developed its own consciousness, its own will. Sleep became a luxury she could no longer afford. Every time she closed her eyes, she imagined her shadow detaching completely, moving freely through her house. She started leaving all the lights on, hoping to banish the shadows altogether. But it was a futile effort. In a house full of objects, shadows were everywhere, lurking in every corner. Her own shadow, now a source of constant dread, clung to her, a dark parasite she couldn't escape. It moved when she moved, but now it also moved when she didn't. Her work, once her passion, became impossible. Her hands trembled too much to hold the delicate brushes. How could she restore old worlds when her own was falling apart? Her reflection in the mirror showed a pale, haunted woman with dark circles under her eyes. She looked like a ghost, and in a way, she was. She was being haunted by a part of herself. Driven by desperation, Alara began researching. She scoured ancient folklore, mythology, and forgotten occult texts, searching for any mention of living shadows or dark. Most of what she found were metaphors, philosophical musings on the dark side of the human psyche. But then, tucked away in a dusty volume of local lore, she found it. A small, chilling entry about a lurking shade. A shadow that could detach from its owner, often as a harbinger of a great change or a terrible loss. The text was vague, offering no solutions, only warnings. It spoke of the shade as a reflection of suppressed desires or forgotten memories, given form by a powerful emotional event. Alara's mind raced. A powerful emotional event. She thought, but months ago, before the shadow's strange behavior began, she had been working on a very special project, a large, intricate map of a city that no longer existed, a place wiped from the earth by a natural disaster centuries ago. The project had consumed her. She felt a strange connection to this lost city, an inexplicable grief for its forgotten people. Could her intense focus, her empathy for this lost place, have somehow untethered her shadow, given it a life of its own, a will to explore and exist independently? The theory was wild, but it was the only one she had. The shadow wasn't malevolent, not yet. Its movements were curious, exploratory. It seemed to be testing its own existence, just as a child would. Perhaps it wasn't a monster to be feared, but a phenomenon to be understood. With a newfound, albeit shaky, resolve, Alira decided to stop fighting it. That night, she turned off all the lights, except for that one single lamp. She stood before the wall and waited. Soon, the shadow began to move. It detached its hand from her side, the dark shape floating an inch away from her own. Instead of screaming, Alira took a deep breath. She didn't run. Say, watch it. She started to communicate with it, in her own way. She would think of a movement, and sometimes, the shadow would respond. She'd imagine raising a hand, and the shadow would lift its own. It was a slow, tentative dance of intention and form. It was no longer her shadow. It was a separate entity that was, for now, tethered to her. It was a part of her, born from her own deep empathy and loneliness, given form in darkness. The story of Alira doesn't end with a dramatic battle or an exorcism. It ends with a quiet acceptance. She learned to live with her companion. It was her secret, her silent partner in the quiet solitude of her life. Sometimes, when she worked, its dark form would lean in, as if to get a closer look at the ancient maps. It was a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the mysteries that lie just beyond our sight. A reminder that sometimes, the most frightening things are not external threats, but echoes of ourselves. Her shadow moved without her. Yes, but in a strange way. She was no longer alone. What do you think? Was Alira's shadow a supernatural entity, or a profound psychological projection of her own loneliness? The story leaves us hanging, right there on the edge of the known world, much like the faded coastlines on Alira's antique maps. Let me know your theories in the comments below. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the shadows. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more explorations into the strange and unexplained. Until next time, stay curious and maybe keep an eye on your shadow.